Frontier TV চাই আপুনি কেনে পাইছে? আমাৰ অনুষ্ঠানবোৰ আপোনাৰ মনোগ্ৰাহী হৈছেনে? আপুনি আমাৰ সৈতে যোগাযোগ কৰিব বিচাৰে নেকি? আপোনাৰ মনৰ কথা আমাৰ আগত ব্যক্ত কৰিব বিচাৰে নেকি? যদি বিচাৰে তেন্তে আমালৈ SMS কৰক। টাইপ কৰক ফ্ৰণ্টিয়াৰ স্পেচ আপোনাৰ মন্তব্য লিখি আমালৈ পঠিয়াই দিয়ক 542423 নম্বৰলৈ। আমি অপেক্ষা কৰিম আপোনাৰ বহুমূলীয়া মন্তব্যলৈ।
Hello and welcome to CANDID with RAHUL.
My guest today is Lobsang Sangye, Prime Minister of Central Tibetan Administration. Prime Minister Sangye, welcome to Frontier Television.
Thank you, Rahul. It's good to be on your show.
Thank you. Your election was held by none other than His Holiness the Dalai Lama as one of the most special days in the 2000 years of Tibetan history. Do you feel it was rightly so?
I think so, but on that day, on August 8, when I took oath,
Yes.
I was just going through the schedule and the routine because I had to complete so many things, right? Take the oaths, give my speech, and acknowledge other people as such. But after the inauguration, and actually just when I was just giving a talk at Vivekananda Foundation, just when I was recalling that day, I became quite emotional because it was a historic event, definitely, and within the presence of His Holiness, especially what he said. He said that when he was young, I think it's 16 years old actually at that time, the elderly regent Tara Rinpoche handed over political authority to me. Today, I'm handing over political authority to young Lobsang Sangye. And he added one line from a Buddhist scripture. He said, "This has been my long cherished goal." So that's politically and historically very powerful and significant, because when he said this, when he said that he is transferring his political authority to me, it's not an end of one chapter, a beginning of another chapter, rather a continuation of the historical leadership of the Tibetan people, and Tibet continues through me, and the legitimacy of the Tibetan leadership will continue through me. And then specifically he said that the 369 years old institution of Dalai Lama, which was established in 1642, which included both the spiritual and political leadership, was transition or separated, whereby the spiritual leadership will rest with him, whereas the political leadership will hand it over to me. So there's a historical significance. And right after His Holiness' statement, I was handed over the seal of 7th Dalai Lama, who established the Kashar in 1751. So I was handed over the seal of 1751, brought by His Holiness Dalai Lama and his entourage from Tibet. So with that seal, and I continue the political leadership, historical significance of it, and most importantly the legitimacy of Tibetan people.
It's a huge responsibility, and I'm sure in the over a month period, you've now realized how big the task is.
It is a big task. And one definition of leadership is when an ordinary person does something extraordinary. It's called leadership. I'm an ordinary person, and I'm given this extraordinary challenge.
You are being modest.
No, I'm an ordinary guy. I came from a very small village in Northeast or Darjeeling, as a refugee, and went to refugee school. So I have a very humble, ordinary background. Now I'm given this extraordinary challenge. Now, even if I fulfill some part of it, then perhaps some Tibetans and some people around the world will appreciate my leadership in 5 years' time. It's to be seen though.
But what are these tasks? I mean, the responsibilities you want to fulfill. What are these responsibilities? Immediate priorities, for example.
The biggest task is and will always be restoration of freedom for Tibetans and return of His Holiness the Dalai Lama to Tibet. That's the biggest task.
Yes, the political one.
That's the political one.
I see.
And to reach that goal, you need an understanding and support of the international community, which includes India. For that, I will have to travel quite a lot internationally and keep the issue of Tibet alive, and if possible, strengthen and sustain it for a longer period of time. And domestically, obviously there are a lot of Tibetans in India and Nepal and Bhutan, and many in Northeast, from Shillong to Arunachal Pradesh to Sikkim to Darjeeling, and I have to provide welfare-oriented or social social projects, improve the health condition, improve the education, maintain our culture, identity. All these are part of the job description, so a lot of things to do.
But the funding is still a problem for the Central Tibetan administration. Where do you get the funds from?
The funding is always a challenge because it's a refugee entity, but in the last 50 years, our elder generation, they have done a good job. In that sense, Central Tibet administration is seen as credible recipient of donations at individual and organizational level from all around the world. They contribute, which we spend for educational and social and economic projects. Having said that, around 25%, even 30% of the administrative cost of the Tibetan administration is raised by Tibetans themselves. So we are trying to increase the Tibetan contribution as much as possible so that we can be self-sustainable in the long run.
But whenever the question of Tibet comes, of course, China comes into play. There's no doubt about it. Next year, 2012, a new regime of Chinese leadership will take over. Now, your trek to diplomacy involving scholars and intellectuals was one thing. You now know for sure that you will be dealing with a very hard-nosed regime. How are you going to tackle the challenge?
Well, next year, the Chinese leadership will have changes, and most likely Xi Jinping will be the president and Li Keqiang will be the prime minister, and we will see some factional politics and all that. But it's a communist system.
Yes.
When the head changes, the body won't change.
Yes.
So it takes some time for president and prime minister to change, bring their own people into the system. So it might take a year or two till we know exactly who is on top, or which faction is on top, the princeling faction, the military faction, or the Maoist nationalist faction, or the liberal faction. So it is to be seen. But from our side, our principal stand has always been, we believe in dialogue, and we want to reach out to the Chinese government to solve the issue of Tibet peacefully, anytime, anywhere. We are ready. Now, as you pointed out, I have a track record of reaching out to Chinese students and scholars at Track 2 level at Harvard University for the last 16 years.
Yes.
The fact that I have committed so much of my time and energy in Track 2 diplomacy in reaching out to hundreds of Chinese students and scholars proves beyond doubt that from my side, we are ready and we are committed for dialogue. Now, whether the Chinese government will reciprocate in kind or not is to be seen. If they reciprocate and extend their hand, we have always extended a hand for peaceful resolution of the Tibet issue.
Deep down, your heart might say that yes, the Chinese will be flexible probably this time around, but your head will say, Lobsang, you are hoping against hope. Is that the case?
No, for two reasons. Tibetans are genetically disposed in dealing with Chinese because we have lived side by side for more than 2,000 years. We have seen China up and close, when they were powerful, when they're not so powerful. They have invaded us, we have invaded them, so we have dealt with them for a long time. And one reason, Chinese army invaded Tibet in 1910.
Yes.
And successfully returning to Tibet from India. So our task is the same. His Holiness has, after the invasion by China, has fled to India, and our task is to return His Holiness to Tibet. We have done that before, and we will do it again. That's my head and heart says, and I believe it.
I wish you the best, but then we all must know that China of 1910 and China of 2010, there's a huge difference. China is militarily more powerful, economically more powerful, and rules over the foreign policy of many nations in the world.
You know, whether one is powerful or not is all relative. For example, Hosni Mubarak was very powerful several months ago. Now he's facing a trial. Ben Ali in Tunisia was very powerful. Now he's on the run. Gaddafi was very powerful even a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
Now Tripoli has fallen, and we don't know where exactly he is. By the time this news is broadcast, he'll be gone or killed. Soviet Union was very powerful, and British Empire was very powerful, but a single simple person called Mahatma Gandhi, he led a movement and succeeded. Nelson Mandela was very weak and was in prison, and the Afrikaner, white Afrikaner regime was very powerful. So power is a relative term, and as I said, in 2000 years we have seen China powerful, less powerful compared to us, but we have dealt with them before, and this time we'll deal with them again. That's why I left Harvard University, I left America, and I have returned to India to work for the cause of Tibet, and especially being myself from the Northeast, given the proximity to Tibet, I think I'm the right place to contribute for the Tibetan cause.
Sure you are, and you refer to Mahatma Gandhi, you refer to Nelson Mandela. I'm sure the next generation will refer to Lobsang Sangye and say all three were lawyers.
Also, Barack Obama is a lawyer, Hillary Clinton is a lawyer, Hillary Clinton is also a lawyer, and the next Chinese President Xi Jinping and the Prime Minister Li Keqiang, they have also studied law. And the Taiwan President Ma Ying-jeou is also a lawyer. So lawyers have a role to play. As long as they use it for public service, it's good. When they use it for private purpose, perhaps lawyers have not a good reputation. But I'm a Buddhist and I'm a Buddhist lawyer, and I'm committed for the cause of Tibet, because I'm proud to be born a Tibetan, and I'll proudly die as one. But while I live, I'll work for Tibetan people.
The law background gives you at least a way to deal with Chinese constitutions and Chinese law. Is that a huge advantage you have from the others who were part of the election you fought?
Law background helps you in a couple of ways. One, especially if you are in the political movement, you have to understand the constitution, the laws and regulations of that country in dealing with them. So that is very important. That's why I'm not surprised most of the non-violent freedom movements, successful ones, have been lawyers. Number two, law helps you analyze situation in a more succinct way, and then you can express it more coherent, more precise way, because you just stick to the facts, and then you interpret it and you analyze it, and you explain it in a lawyerly way. So that helps you, because the situation of Tibet or any issue is very complex.
Yes.
So that helps you, and perhaps maybe you're right. Among all the other candidates who fought for the collective position in the Tibetan election, they were very senior in experience, and they didn't get votes as much as me, at least.
Yes.
Having said that, there was a former Prime Minister or the Kaluntripa, most seasoned diplomat or minister, the Speaker of the Parliament, Deputy Speaker, and the Private Secretary of His Holiness Dalai Lama. So I went against them. But one was lawyer, Domagiri. She's a very good lawyer. But I think I was the youngest, and people voted for me. Perhaps Tibetans were demanding for change, and I just happened to be the guy, and they voted for me. Let's see what happens in the next 5 years.
They're happy now?
I hope so. That's my job, to keep them happy. If not happy, at least content. Or at least not get disappointed that they voted for me, that I didn't live up to the expectation. But I'm committed to this cause, and I'll work very, very hard to live up to the expectation and fulfill the vision of His Holiness the Dalai Lama.